Foxy's videos of the week. All right, we got 2 weeks before Black History Month. 2 more weekends. Technically, we actually got 1 more weekend because we all know that I always take the last weekend off. So I'm preparing, like I said, for the longest time for Black History Month to go into a deeper dive than what we normally have done with the whole. I don't have to explain it again. We're doing a more deeper dive for Black History Month. So and I hate to say the word condition, but it is kind of what I'm trying to do is condition to you to what I'm actually going for. These are some of the stories that I'm getting into. So let's go ahead and get into the first one, which is a question that was given to white people in 1963.
But when white folks were asked that question in 1963, when it was happening, when it was the present, not 60 years in the rearview mirror, and they were asked it by the Gallup organization in that year. The question was, do you believe black folks are treated equally in your community in education, housing, and employment? Now, come on, y'all. It's 1963. We know the answer. This is before the Civil Rights Act, before the Voting Rights Act, before the Fair Housing Act. It is the year of the March on Washington, the year that Medgar Evers is shot down dead in his driveway in Jackson, Mississippi, the year that Governor Wallace stands in the schoolhouse door at the University of Alabama and says, segregation today, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever. It is the year that he turns those dogs and water cannons in Birmingham on those children at the behest of Bull Connor. So we know the answer to the question. This is not a hard pop quiz. The answer is no, but what do you think white Americans in 1963 said? 2 out of 3 answered the question, yes, everything here is fine. There is nothing to see. There are only 2 possible explanations for why the vast majority of white folks couldn't see the truth. Explanation number 1 is that white folks are just so stupid and ignorant and cold-hearted that they just can't see or just refuse to see. I don't happen to believe that's true. I think there's an easier and a more disturbing answer to the question, and it's about privilege. The reason white folks didn't know is because they didn't have to know.
So, like I said, we're going to go into a more deeper dive. And I want you to understand when these questions are going on then and going on now. Why I said I'm going into a deeper dive, because everybody wants to give that. This is the reason why. This is the answer. And I try to tell people all the time, it's layers to what the answer is. Because you're asking different people who grew up in different ways. Now, the easier route to always say is because they're racist. Yeah. And I honestly, to a fault, believe that honestly, it's second best answer, or the second best reason. That racism is the second best reason of why they feel that way. I've always felt like the first reason was it don't affect me.
Yep.
It's not going to affect me in any way what happens to those people, and they will feel this way if you were saying the same question of poor white people. Their own race.
No, ain't gonna be quite the same thing.
Look.
There's layers to this, like you said.
It is, and I know I can break that down too, but I don't have the brain power right now because it's getting late for me, and I'm going to sleep late tomorrow. But my point is so many layers to it. Why I said I want y'all to get conditioned into. We're not just going to get into this little formulated stuff that we always talk about, always discuss. Always give the same answer. Always this, we're going to yell at the top of our lungs and everything else. No, we're going to be starting going to some real deep diving into some of these things. So if you're going to come with the whole, it's racism. Okay, explain that. It's racism. okay, I'm gonna need you to go sit down and I'm gonna need you to go listen. Don't walk away, just listen. Because you're right and you're half right. It's more to it.
It is, but it's like I think it's, and that's why I'm glad you're going to go down that path, because there's different ways to come at these topics, and depends on you guys. If you've been watching the show for some years, you know how I am. It depends on the mood that I'm in and how the conversation is flowing, how I'm going to approach it. Right? I'm not here to teach, saying white people how to appreciate black people. That's not my thing. I can give a rat's ass about that. I'm past that. But I do think that it's important to, if you actually want to get at it, if you really want to get at it, it's important to first hit that first barrier that you were talking about, Marlon, where we reflectively just say it's racist. And then inspect that a little bit more, right? Because calling things racist, even if it is true that something is manifesting as racist, that doesn't necessarily mean that's the motivation for how we got there, right? So a person's outlook or behavior can manifest as racist, but really what it is it's selfish, or really what it is they are misled, or really what it is they're scared, or really, like, there's so many things that'll bring a person to racist behavior. Because that's why we always had that conflict when you're trying to talk to certain groups of people, where they're like, well, I'm not racist. I don't have a racist bone in my body. Okay, but how would you feel if your daughter brought home a white boy, or your daughter brought home a black man, right? How would you feel, right? How would that really interrupt or affect you? So sometimes it's like, it's easy to just flag it off as racist, and some things are. Like nowadays, if you are still supporting Trump at this particular stage of the game, you may not be racist, but it means that you're 100% comfortable with interacting with racists, because you know for a fact that Nazi sympathizers align with his campaign. You know for a fact that white supremacists align with his campaign, that Christian nationalists align with his campaign, right? You know for a fact that these groups hail his campaign over anyone else's. They don't want to deal with the Democrats. They don't want to deal with the squishy Republicans. They don't want to deal with anybody except Trump and maybe DeSantis. And when that's the case, and you yourself are a decent person, and you do not go through life hating on everybody who doesn't look like you, but you feel comfortable in a group that is comprised of these things, then you have to look at yourself, because there's something about them you see in yourself that you're willing to attach to, that it doesn't make you just revolt against the idea of being associated with these groups. Right? So now you yourself don't walk around and say the N-word. You yourself go to work each day and interact with people who don't look like you, and you do just fine. You even go to lunch and you have great conversations and interactions and all those things. But when it's time for you to vote, you actively vote in a way that will harm other groups. And it's not even hidden. Like, that's, to me, that's actually worse than the avowed racist. The avowed racist knows why he's doing what he's doing. Okay? You still lying to yourself. You still saying, I like the tax policy.